It is not worth it. Do not have children. Do not do it to yourself. I am trying to save you because, hot take, it's not worth it.
I'm going to be honest, I don't like that. I don't like people telling other people what life decisions they should or shouldn't make. There's a difference between sharing your personal experience and assuming that your personal experience is everyone's personal experience. Hi guys, so today we're going to talk about a TikTok I saw of a mom who basically seems like she's a regretful mom, somebody who became a parent and it wasn't what she expected it to be. I watched this TikTok and I had a lot of thoughts and a lot of feelings, I'm going to be honest. So today that's what we're going to be reacting to, obviously as an expecting mother myself. This is a topic that definitely hits close to home, so hopefully this will be a rich discussion. Also, just a reminder, my next novel, A Song at Dead Man's Cove, is set to release this June 2025. Make sure you're subscribed to my email newsletter if you aren't already so that you can be notified once it's out. It's a gothic horror novel, and it does actually have a lot of themes of motherhood in there as well. So if this is a topic that you're hoping to explore in fiction, you might enjoy that book. Without further ado, let's react to this TikTok.
If you are debating having children, please stop and listen. My dream.
Really quickly, just want to say she's very specific about what audience she's speaking to. She's talking about women who want to be moms or are considering being moms, just something to consider while we move into what she's about to say.
Dream since I was a little girl was to have a baby. I wanted to be a mom. All I ever wanted was one little girl, and I was going to name her Harley, and my dream was going to be, that was it. That was the dream. I actually was given my dream. I married everything I ever put on paper for a guy that I would want. He's that and more. And then I get pregnant and I have a daughter. I have a girl. Oh my God. Dream come true. I was like, this is great. Because I've only really ever wanted one child and I wanted just one girl. And I was like, oh, thank you, God. I regret making being a mom my dream. And I wish that I did not have that as a dream. I have been severely disappointed with the dream. And my daughter is the cutest, most beautiful, fun, smart little girl, and I love her more than anything on this planet. I would give my life for her in 2 seconds. I would do it all over again for her 1,000,000 times over. All of that is facts. But what also is a fact at the same time is I was dreaming of a life that I had no idea what it was about. It's not just a few moments of like, no, don't do that. A few smelly diapers, and you're just gonna have this happy-go-lucky fucking family. No, that's not reality. That's not real life. You know what is real life? Me being at home, thinking that being a stay-at-home mom was a dream, and I actually was given the opportunity. And now we're in a position where I don't really have a choice but to stay home with her right now. It's temporary, thank God. But being a mother is the most draining experience of your life.
Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a second and just touch on this point of like expectations versus reality. My general take, and this is something that you can find in the personal growth journal as well, it's one of the templates in here, is that we should prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and expect the midpoint between those two spots, what I like to call the most realistic case scenario in most situations. So for example, in this situation, preparing for the worst means expecting that your life is going to be radically different, that you're basically not going to have time to do anything that you want to do once you're a mom, that self-care is going to look radically different, that you won't be productive, that all of your life will be basically hemorrhaged to this child that you're bringing into the world. That is very much something that I am preparing for. It's why, for instance, I'm scheduling out my videos 2, 3, 4 months in advance, because I just know I'm not going to be able to do anything productive once the baby comes. And I was talking to somebody recently who was saying to me, like, oh, just so you know, Anna, like, you can't be that productive once the baby comes. Like, when I had a baby, I thought that I could maybe get some work done in that month afterwards, and I actually didn't end up doing any of it. And I was just like, of course, fully expecting that, going into this experience, fully aware that that is what is entailed in having a baby. But on the other hand, you also want to have hope for the best case scenario, because hope is integral to moving forward and to surviving as a human being. We all need hope if we're going to continue doing what we're doing. So maybe the best case scenario in this situation is, yeah, the baby cries here and there, you have to change some dirty diapers, but overall it's very idyllic and relaxing, and you're able to rest, and you're completely transformed for the better, which honestly sounds, a little bit like what this content creator was going into motherhood expecting, a little bit more of the best case scenario. So you want to prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and then expect the midpoint, that is most realistically what you're going to get. So in this situation, what's the midpoint between those things? Probably more crying than you're hoping for. Baby might not cry 24/7, but they're going to cry definitely to the point where it starts to exhaust you. Your sleep is going to suffer. It's not going to be so unmanageable where, you completely crack, hopefully. But there's a very good likelihood that you're going to be pretty fatigued in those first few months. Your relationships are going to change. There's going to be a lot more stress in general. You're not going to have as much time for self-care. Doesn't mean that you won't have any time for self-care. It just means that there will be significantly less of it. You get the picture. That's kind of like the midpoint between best case scenario and worst case scenario. And for some people, it doesn't really end up being the midpoint. For some people, it ends up being closer to the better case scenario. For some people, it ends up being closer to the worst case scenario. But as a rule of thumb, I think it's a safe guess that we can expect things to be somewhere around that midpoint, because very rarely are things ever just all bad or all good. Now, something that I was talking about actually on my other channel, Book and Hearth, with someone in the comments about, was I had mentioned in a video that I think there's a lot of negativity about motherhood these days, especially on the internet, because negativity is what does well on the internet. And that I actually think going into it with an optimistic mindset can be really helpful for women. And one of the people in the comments was saying, well, no, actually, I wish that somebody had prepared me for how, incredibly difficult things would be, and how actually I had a very traumatic birth experience. And in having that conversation with that person, I realized actually, I don't disagree. And I think I need to be really clear what I mean by going into it with an optimistic mindset. Because I'm not actually talking about expecting the best case scenario. I'm talking more about something that I guess you would call like optimistic pessimism, which is where you assume things will be so much harder than you can possibly imagine, where you basically, again, prepare for the worst case scenario. But the optimistic piece is that I can do it. I can handle it. I can overcome this. I can be resilient through this. I can come out stronger on the other side. And no matter how difficult it is, I got this. Almost like a form of self-efficacy. And I realized that's actually a much more accurate representation of the attitude I try to take in life. I typically assume that unforeseen challenges are going to come up, things are going to go wrong, and also the optimistic piece is I will get through it. I will overcome it. And I think both of those pieces are really important. You need to prepare for the worst, but also feel confident that you will be able to handle it.
It changes every single person around you. Every single person around you. Every single friend, every family member, the relationship with your husband, the relationship with yourself. I am so fat. I don't recognize myself at all. I was so much more fit before I had her. I was geared the fuck in. None of my clothes fit me. My husband works a lot more than he used to. So spending time with him, it's not like it used to be. We are in bed the latest at 9 o'clock every day. The world is the most terrifying place that it's ever been in for us as a country. And the thought that I can't do whatever I have to do to survive because I have her and I need to make sure that she survives, and I'm terrified of what her future is going to look like. I can't take a shit by myself. I can't eat when I want to. I can't go out and just get a Dunkin' whenever I want to. I can't film a video whenever I want to.
So I can tell that this mom is really struggling, and I get the sense that maybe there's a lack of support in her life. I know she mentioned she has a wonderful husband, he has to work longer hours now, and I understand that, but I still think it is really important for even stay-at-home moms to find time off. Because if you have no time off, if you are always taking care of a child like this, burnout and exhaustion and depression are to be expected. This sort of reaction is to be expected. It's like working 24/7. Who can do that? Who can do that for an extended period of time? So whether that means, the partner helping out more when he is available, or whether it means extended family helping, or, if affordable, being able to get some help, that feels extremely important. Because even I myself, as I'm hearing, this baby cry and scream in the background, I feel myself getting a little annoyed too, it's definitely not pleasant to hear that 24/7. And on one hand, I'm like, damn, I can totally see why you're so annoyed. And on the other hand, I'm like, hey, do you want to maybe handle this and not film the video right now? But this expectation that postpartum moms do it all, handle it all for an extended period of time is just not feasible. It's not realistic. And I think it's bound to cause issues like this.
I can't scream whenever I want to. I can't go to dinner whenever I want to. And let me explain this, because if someone were to tell me that with how bad I wanted children, I would have just said, I'm willing to make that sacrifice. I love my future baby more than anything in the world. I want to make that sacrifice. You don't know what you don't know. You thinking that sacrifice, all of those things, isn't going to change you. And not just change you for good, some of parts of me have changed for the worst.
This idea that you don't know what you don't know is true, but it applies to literally everything. I think the road not taken is very easy to see as the grass being greener on the other side. But that too is also a situation of you don't know what you don't know. You pick one career over the other. Maybe you don't like it so much. You didn't know that you weren't going to like it. But maybe if you had gone into that other career, you also wouldn't have liked that. You also don't know that. I think this brings up a really important question around the discourse about motherhood, which is it better to be openly negative about motherhood in order to prevent future regretful parents, in order to prevent people who maybe actually don't want to be parents? Or would it be better to go into motherhood with more of a positive, hopeful attitude? So again, this idea of is it better to be optimistic, or is it better to be extremely pessimistic, so that people who are maybe not a great fit for parenthood reconsider their choice? Like I said, I think it is really important to have a very realistic understanding of what parenting entails. And if you have a very idealized fantasy of what it entails, that does need to be squashed, because that is very clearly not what's going to happen. And honestly, I think that a lot of the toxic parents out there in the world were people who didn't actually want children. People who maybe thought that a child was going to give them eternal love and admiration and validation that they couldn't get from within themselves. People who thought that this is just the thing you do, you just have kids, you don't really think about how difficult it is beforehand. People who wanted to maybe be worshipped as a mother or a father in some way. I think a lot of those people ended up being super harmful parents, and it really boils down to the fact that they weren't supposed to be parents. It wasn't truly what they wanted for themselves. So in that sense, if videos like this deter those people from becoming parents, great. No one should become a parent who is not realistic about what it entails and not fit to be a parent. But on the other hand, I do think that the scale has tipped too far on the other side, where I see such an overwhelming amount of negativity about parenthood and motherhood in particular on social media. And I'm seeing actually a lot of anti-natalist movements, a lot of people actively telling people you should not be having children, shaming people for choosing to have children. I've had comments on my videos, I've seen comments on other women's videos, basically shaming them for deciding to get pregnant and deciding to have children. This one person said to me that it's akin to murder or something like that. And if, God forbid, you have a positive experience with pregnancy or motherhood, it's gotten to the point where you're not really allowed to talk about it without giving a disclaimer, without saying like, well, yes, I've had a very positive pregnancy, but I completely understand that's not most women's experience. Or I love being a mother, but it's also extremely difficult. And, I understand that it's really hard on other people. When we shouldn't really need to make those sorts of disclaimers. Your experience is your experience. It is valid. It does not mean that you are necessarily speaking for everybody's experience. Although, as we'll get to in a second, it kind of does seem like that's what this content creator is doing. But people have just as much of a right to talk about the positive aspects of parenthood as the negative aspects of parenthood. And I do think from what I've seen, the scales have tipped too far to the other side, where things are just extremely negative, and a lot of people are really scared about the idea of having kids, even parents who maybe it is what's the right fit for them. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Which one is worse? Scaring people off by saying that parenthood is fucking awful, or being positive about parenthood and giving people an unrealistic expectation of what it's going to be like?
I wish I got it earlier. Okay? I wish I just had the click earlier that this isn't a life path that I have to take as a woman. If you are child-free, sometimes all you have to know is that you would be a good mother. Sometimes you just have to tell yourself, if I had kids, I would be the best mom. And you would have confidence in that. And then choose to not have children. I am trying to save you. Dream bigger. Dream bigger. Do not try to make the family that you've always wanted. Don't even do it. Don't do it. Go travel, bitch. Go be hot. Go create your family with friends and experiences and yourself and your spirituality and nature. Because, hot take, it's not worth it.
Okay, so this is the main qualm that I have with this video is she's pretty explicitly telling people, don't do it. It's not worth it. And I was talking about how, everyone is valid in sharing their experience, and they don't need to give 1,000 disclaimers and say if you're having a different experience than me, it's totally fine. No, you don't have to do that. But there's a difference between sharing your personal experience and assuming that your personal experience is everyone's personal experience. These dreams that she listed, traveling, being hot, exploring nature, whatever it is, it again really sounds like the grass is greener on the other side. If you were to take that path, you might also feel regretful of that and say, oh my God, I wish that I had done this instead. And actually, studies have shown that people tend to regret the things they don't do a lot more than the things they do. So if somebody wants to be a parent and decides, no, I'm too scared to do that because of all the negativity I'm seeing online, scientifically speaking, they're more likely to regret that choice. Now, I still think they should be able to make that choice. I don't think that anybody should be pressuring anyone into being a parent. But this is something we got to be aware of, that the path not taken will always cause a lot of regret.
My child is the best thing in the world and I love her so much, but I hate how much I love her. I hate the things that I know that I'm capable of doing to protect her. And especially in the state of the world right now, bitch, don't do it. I am terrified for her future every day. It is not worth it. It is not worth it. Do not have children. Do not do it to yourself. There is no return receipt. There's no. She's almost 9 months old, and I am still in the trenches. In the fucking mental trenches, okay? The rage I have inside of me. The depression and the wanting to I have inside of me. Even with a supportive partner, even with a person that's your help, that's your village sometimes, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It still fucking sucks. Because a baby, for many, 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 many years, not just a newborn, for many years, bitch, they are a parasite. And that means that they will not only suck every fucking thing of your energy, but they will also suck every ounce of your soul from your body.
I'm trying to hold the dialectics of, I love my daughter, I would do anything for her, and it's not worth it, don't do it. my daughter is a parasite. I feel like I'm usually pretty good at holding the dialectics of two things that sound like they should be opposites but really can coexist. But in this particular case, I'm sorry, I'm really struggling. I'm really struggling to hold those two because I just can't help but wonder how this child is going to feel one day if she comes across this video, which is very likely considering it has millions of views, and considering the fact that, she's saying these things while holding her daughter. Kids pick up on these things. Kids pick up when they're not wanted, and it can be deeply hurtful. And while, parents are not bad people if they feel that way, they are entitled to their emotional experiences. I do think there needs to be a little bit of mindfulness with, okay, what are you going to do with those feelings? Because some of the things you could choose to do with those feelings, like calling your daughter a parasite to millions of people, could be really hurtful to that child. I know there are all these anonymous forums of regretful parents kind of processing through their feelings. And I assume that people are also talking about this privately, with their therapist behind closed doors, with their friends. But that's the key though. You can process through these things either anonymously or privately, and then it doesn't have as much potential to cause harm to the child. I really don't mean for this to sound like I want to silence this woman, because that's not what I want. I think these emotions are really important for her to work through and for her to openly express. But I think sometimes in the era of the internet, we assume that because we have a right to openly express how we're feeling, it's a good idea to publicly state it. And those two are very different things. There is absolutely nothing wrong with having any sort of emotional experience. But when it comes to choosing what you want to do with that emotional experience, it's really not a matter of everything goes. It's really not a matter of, well, I want to process this to millions of people, so here I go. Remember at the beginning of the video, I mentioned remember her audience. She's speaking to women who want children and women who are on the fence about having children. And her message was pretty clearly, do not have children. I'm going to be honest, I don't like that. I don't like people telling other people what life decisions they should or shouldn't make. It would be pretty messed up if the reverse were happening, if someone were saying, no, you should absolutely have children. In fact, people have done that, like Abby Shapiro, and I've spoken out against that and how messed up it is. I think it's equally messed up to tell people don't have children because I had a bad experience with it. And I'm usually a very big proponent of understanding who the audience is for when you're consuming a piece of media. Let me give you an example. A week or two ago, I saw a TikTok video where a woman was talking about how she had, I think it's called a placental ablation or something, which is when the placenta detaches from the wall of the uterus and the baby's no longer getting oxygen and nutrients and everything that it needs to get. And the message of her video was basically, if you start to not feel your baby kicking, or if you feel like something could be wrong, go to the hospital. Don't not do it. And when I saw that TikTok, I remember thinking Anna, you're not the audience. You are not the audience for this because you already pay more attention to physical symptoms than the average person. You have a history of illness anxiety. Thank God I haven't had it too bad during this pregnancy, knock on wood. But I was able to kind of digest that video and understand, okay, I'm not the audience. The audience who this video was helpful for is women who are maybe quick to dismiss their intuition, who it would benefit to listen to their intuition more. And that wasn't something that the content creator explicitly stated. She didn't give a disclaimer saying if you have illness anxiety, maybe this advice isn't for you. And that's fine. I don't think she should have to do that. I think it's totally on me as the consumer to recognize I'm not the target audience. Therefore, I don't need to take this at face value and I don't need to get offended about it because it's just not for me. It's not for me. It benefits other people, other populations. I happen to be one of the people who it doesn't benefit. But that feels very different from straight up telling people, hey, I'm speaking to this very broad audience and I'm specifically telling you what to do and what not to do. Yeah, I don't like that. I'm going to be honest, I don't like that. And again, going back to this idea of babies are parasites, I'm just is it surprising to people that babies are totally dependent? I mean, that is something that I feel like is obvious, but maybe it's not if you've never been around babies before. So on one hand, I'm okay, well, if you don't know that, if you don't know that babies are completely dependent and are going to require a lot of you, then maybe it's a good thing to find out before becoming a parent. Maybe videos like this can raise awareness in that sense. But on the other hand, I really don't think they're parasites either. And I know that parenthood comes with very many enriching aspects for many people as well. And I know what people are going to say. I know what they're going to say. Well, you're not a mom yet. Just you wait. You'll see. It's going to be fucking awful. Thank you so much for the kind wishes. Actually, though, I have been around other parents and I've spoken to them on very intimate levels about the benefits that they've reaped from parenthood. And even before becoming an actual parent, even before my child is born, I've already had so many enriching aspects of this transition. I actually think that my body image is better. Ironically, it's like almost a form of reverse body dysmorphia. You know, my husband was asking me this. He was like, do you feel body dysmorphia? Because like your body's changing so much. And I was like, honestly, no. I also feel like pregnancy has made me more confident as a person. You know, I've spoken on this channel about how it's kind of switched my fight or flight response into more of a fight. I'm not really as scared of standing up for myself and the people I care about anymore. It's also already shifted my priorities where it's like things can't really get to me as much. I choose not to let them get to me as much because if I get upset, then that produces a whole bunch of cortisol in my child, and that unleashes a whole cascade of negative health outcomes itself. And so it's like before, there are things that happened that would have maybe upset me, that now it's just like, no, I choose not to let that upset me because my number one priority right now is my child and nothing else matters. And that's all before I'm even a mom. So, you know, like there are also benefits. And I'm very sorry that this mother has not experienced those benefits. It sounds like postpartum has been very challenging for her. But I think we need to be aware when we're talking about our own experience that it is not necessarily everyone's experience. I think it's really been drilled into people who have positive experiences with parenthood to say, you know, I understand that this isn't the case for everyone. And I think we've gotten to a point where maybe also parents who have not had good experiences with parenthood can equally say, okay, I've had a really, really bad run of it, but I also recognize that's not the case for everyone.
And I would do it for it. But I'm not ever doing it again for a non-existent child. No. I know better now. I'm smart. I will never do it again. So, listen. There's other people that are going to detest me, I'm sure, in the comments. There'll be people that agree with me. I'm just saying, my viewpoint matters here. I'm a mom of a 9-month-old. I'm 30 years old. I waited. I did everything right. And it's still the hardest thing I've ever done. And it still fucking sucks. It fucking sucks. Most of the time it sucks. I'm angry and tired and annoyed and depressed and fat more times than I am happy. I'm happy when she's smiling, when she's laughing. I'm happy in those moments. And then every other moment I'm miserable. So, don't do it. Especially with the climate right now in the world. Do not do it.
Yeah, you know, that's another thing that I hear a lot with these anti-natalist movements is this idea of like, how could you have a child in this climate? Of course, like, you need to make sure that kids will have more than just a life of pain when you bring them into this world. Whether that means, you know, you're not bringing them into the world with a disability that will cause them like complete agony every second of their life. I don't even know if there are disabilities that do this. I'm just saying, like, if there exists such a thing, you know, that's kind of irresponsible to bring a child into that sort of life. Not bringing a child into extreme poverty or like an active war zone. I agree that that is, you know, a little bit cruel and a little bit selfish to do. But then there's also this attitude that I've been seeing take hold even in like perfectly fine, often well-off Western circles where people are not in an active war zone or not experiencing extreme poverty, that like circumstances need to be just right to have kids. And if there's any sort of instability or turmoil in the world, that it's messed up of you to choose to have kids. And I disagree with that for a number of reasons. First of all, if you're waiting for the perfect moment where the world is in equilibrium, that will never come. That will never happen. It just doesn't exist. Any parent will tell you the right moment to have a child doesn't exist. And number two, again, remember that both you and your child are resilient. So you can handle it. You can absolutely prepare for the worst and say, oh my God, it looks like we're headed for World War III or something, or it looks like things are getting really unstable politically, tensions are rising, there's a lot of tribalism. And also, I believe that my family will outlive this. I believe that my family has the strength to still find meaning and joy in a life of difficulty, as long as it's not a moment of constant agony, like if you are, say, in an active war zone, like if you're in Gaza, for example. I think people need to give themselves a little bit more credit that they can do it. They can handle it. They are strong enough. Number 3, unexpected things can always come up once they're born. You could have perfectly tranquil circumstances before you choose to have the child, but then once the child is born, you never know what's going to happen. You just can't predict these things. You can't make decisions based on hoping that there's going to ever be a perfect time for something. Number 4, in moments of turmoil, family's kind of all that matters. All that matters. During the pandemic lockdown, for instance, who was the best off? Was it the people that were extremely lonely, living in a tiny cubicle in New York City on their own? Was it the people who were in unhealthy relationships? No, it was the people who were investing in their families, who were making that a priority. Family can be something extremely grounding in times of turmoil. And then lastly, I do feel a little bit shamed, frankly, not by her necessarily, but by other people and what other people have said to me about the fact that I'm choosing to have a baby in an unstable time in history. And honestly, I'm not worried about it, you guys. I'm not worried about it because I have a lot of confidence in my ability to survive, in my ability to protect my children, in my ability to instill resilience in my children. And I have this vision of myself at 80 years old, one day hopefully surrounded with grandchildren of my own, hopefully having had a full, rich life that makes surviving through the turmoil worth it. Bottom line, you guys, all decisions have pros and cons. Make sure you're making the best choice for yourself. Make sure you're listening to a wide array of perspectives, whether it's, more positive perspective like mine, a more negative perspective like hers. Make sure you are, asking people, hey, how do you feel about parenthood in your actual life more than just on the internet? Because what's on the internet is not always a true reflection of what real life looks like. And try not to let strangers on the internet like myself or her to sway you too much, because ultimately you are the one that has to live with the consequences of your decisions. And there are pros and cons to everything, and you are the only one who truly knows what is right for you. So you will never hear me encourage or discourage anyone from having children, because that is a deeply personal choice that I would never want to presume I somehow know better about that person's life. And I do think that in real life interactions and modeling from other people who were parents before you is hugely important for how you become as a parent. For example, I have a cousin who started traveling with his daughter, I think, when she was about 2 or 3 months. Before age 1, she'd been to 10 countries, takes her everywhere. She's extremely enriched, extremely cognitively stimulated, and extremely bright because of it. And that's kind of been my prototype of what I can accomplish as a parent. So now going into parenthood, it's like, of course I intend to start traveling with a baby at 3 months old. Of course I plan to still go out and do things and socialize and integrate the child into my social life, because I've seen that modeled to me. So it's really important to surround yourself with parents who can give you a healthy template of what parenthood can look like, because those things are inadvertently contagious to some extent. And when the cons come up, you will always experience regret. When, the baby is colic and won't stop crying, or, you feel really bad about your body image, you're going to feel regret. You're going to wonder, did I make the right choice? Trust me, you would have felt that way no matter what choice you made. When the cons come up for the path you've taken, of course you're going to ask yourself that. That's normal. Just try to make the best of the decisions you have made, and if necessary, make different decisions moving forward. Like how this mom was saying, I wouldn't do it again. Totally fine. You absolutely don't have to. If that's the right choice for you, then that's the right choice for you. But those are my takes on this video. And I'm really curious to hear what you guys think about it. So, pop your thoughts down in the comments below, and I'll see you soon.